I'm 75 now, and I can't remember anybody except the Queen being there and feeling that fear every single day. And then I suppose they think to themselves, well, maybe that there is a way out.
The royal palace is in turmoil as Prince William catches Camilla in a shocking act, burning Princess Diana's cherished belongings. The horrifying scene has left royal staff stunned and the monarchy teetering on the edge. This brazen betrayal has ignited a firestorm of outrage and heartbreak. But what exactly drove Camilla to this unthinkable deed? How will William respond? Join us as we dive into the explosive drama, unravel the scandal, and reveal the gut-wrenching moment that's shaking the royal family to its very core. The sealed door at Clarence House. A royal secret ignites. The corridors of Clarence House are no strangers to whispers, but some corners carry heavier silence than others. For years, staff avoided one narrow passage near the Queen Mother's old drawing room. Most dismissed it as forgotten storage, a place where dusty trunks and unused furniture might rest. Yet, on a stormy Thursday in March 2022, that quiet corridor erupted into the center of a mystery that left even seasoned attendants unsettled. It began innocently. Oliver, one of the youngest footmen, was delivering tea when he caught a scent lingering in the air. At first, it seemed like a faint trace of perfume, but underneath lay something sharper, unsettling, burning fabric. His steps slowed. The smell drew him further into the corridor until he noticed what no one expected. The door, always locked, was slightly ajar. From within, a warm flicker danced against the shadows. Around that very moment, Prince William returned unexpectedly from a nearby charity appearance. He was not meant to be at Clarence House that night, yet something led him back. Oliver, pale and hesitant, intercepted him with urgent whispers of smoke and an open door. Without hesitation, William strode down the hallway, his expression tightening with each step. That room was no ordinary storage. In hushed circles, it was known as the chamber where Diana's belongings had once been placed after her passing in 1997. Sealed and left untouched for decades. Few had ever seen the inside, and fewer still possessed the keys. As William approached, the air thickened with heat and ash. He pushed the door wider, and the sight before him froze him in place. Camilla stood inside, wrapped in a shawl, her posture calm yet purposeful. A fire bin glowed at her side, flames curling around silk and parchment. Photographs warped and blackened in the heat. A leather-bound book sagged, and jewels glimmered faintly on the floor. She did not flinch at his arrival. She merely met his gaze, as though she had been expecting him. For a moment, silence reigned, broken only by the crackle of flames. The discovery was not mere carelessness. It carried the weight of intent. In that tense air, questions flooded. Why now? Why here? And why those belongings? William's voice, low but firm, finally broke the silence. Get the staff. What unfolded in that sealed corridor remains shrouded in speculation, but one truth endures. Clarence House had revealed a secret that night, and nothing inside its walls would ever feel the same again. But what secret did Camilla try to hide when William walked in? Stay glued to see the shocking truth unfold. Camilla's secret could no longer stay hidden. The moment William pushed open the heavy door, silence filled the air like a storm about to break. There she was, Camilla, standing in the dim light, clutching something delicate, something unmistakable. A silk blouse, pale pink, the kind Diana had worn so often in the 1980s. For a second, it looked almost innocent, but William knew better. His eyes did not see a stepmother that night. He saw someone crossing into dangerous territory, a line that could never be uncrossed. Camilla's hands trembled, yet her expression was cold. Without hesitation, She let the blouse slip into the flames crackling before her. The fabric twisted, darkened, and crumbled, taking with it a piece of memory meant to be cherished. William's voice broke the silence at last, low, calm, but filled with steel. Why? Her reply was sharp, almost rehearsed. Some things belong in the past. Everyone must learn to accept that. The words echoed through the room, heavy and cruel. To William, this wasn't history being erased. It was his mother's spirit being desecrated. These weren't just clothes or photos. They were fragments of a life, a presence that had shaped him and Harry. Among the ashes, a photograph slipped forward, half burned, yet still clear enough to reveal Diana's smile, holding Harry in her arms at Balmoral. William's hand brushed against it, and in that moment, something unshakable stirred inside him. He spoke firmly, his voice carrying the weight of both son and future king. This will never be destroyed. Not while I live. Camilla's eyes met his, laced with defiance but also something darker, perhaps exhaustion from years of living in Diana's shadow. Maybe she believed that by burning the remnants, she could finally free herself. But what she underestimated was the bond between Diana and her sons, a bond stronger than fire, stronger than silence, stronger than the crown itself. What began as quiet flames turned into a confrontation that would echo in whispers for years to come. A reminder that some legacies cannot be erased, no matter how hard anyone tries. But what secrets could Diana's ashes be hiding that the world has never seen? Stay with us to find out. The secrets hidden in Diana's ashes. When the smoke cleared, the silence was louder than the flames that had roared through the room. What looked like simple debris in an iron bin was, in truth, fragments of a story too painful to ignore. The smell of scorched leather and burned silk lingered. But it wasn't just fabric or paper that had been lost. These were the irreplaceable traces of Princess Diana's private world, moments she had chosen to protect, now reduced to ashes and charred edges. Whispers quickly spread that the fire wasn't an accident. After all, why did it consume originals? Objects tied so closely to Diana's identity, while sparing trinkets of little meaning. Among the remains was part of a diary page, its ink blurred, yet still legible. I felt peace today, a haunting echo of her voice, cut short by flames. William recognized the handwriting instantly, the words striking him as if his mother had spoken them one last time. And then there was the ballet slipper. Blackened at the toes, its ribbon melted into a tangled knot. It once belonged to Diana's private rehearsal, a performance she had secretly prepared for Charles. William, who had replayed the recording endlessly as a boy, felt a sharp pain seeing it now, twisted and broken. These weren't random losses. They were deliberate erasures. The most devastating discovery was a letter addressed to Harry. Half-burned, the surviving words carried both love and warning. My darling boy, no matter where life takes you, never forget that kindness is stronger than status. The sentence ended abruptly, as though Diana herself had been silenced mid-thought. Who could have allowed such destruction? Staff moved quietly, more like mourners than cleaners, salvaging what little remained. Yet questions hung heavy. Was this negligence, or a calculated act to erase a legacy some wished forgotten? In a wooden box, untouched by the flames, William found what felt like sacred relics. A brooch shaped like a crescent moon, a torn page from one of Diana's speeches, and a dried flower from her Kensington garden. Holding it close, his instruction was final. The room would be locked, its secrets guarded. The fire may have burned out, but the consequences and the suspicions it sparked continue to smolder. But what truly unfolded the night Diana's memory was tested? Stay connected to your screen. to uncover the full story. The night Diana's memory was tested, a staff in shock, whispered reactions, and corridors too heavy for footsteps. This is how word spread through Clarence House that evening. Not through shouts or public scandal, but through silence. Silence that carried more weight than any headline. Teacups sat untouched in the servants' hall, the air colder than usual, and even the most seasoned attendants felt a shift they could not ignore. Elizabeth, the senior dresser whose hands once fastened Diana's gowns before grand galas, sat quietly at the oak table. She had returned from the sealed room with eyes reddened, but her lips stayed tight until a young valet finally asked the question everyone feared. Was it really hers? Elizabeth's nod was enough. The perfume on the blouse, Penhaligon's Bluebell, the very scent Diana wore every summer, had betrayed the truth. Her voice cracked as she confirmed it, and the room grew stiller than before. Meanwhile, Thomas, a longtime footman who had once carried tea to Diana while she scribbled notes for her sons on the floor, could not keep still. He muttered to another aide that this was no ordinary act of tidying or discarding. It felt like someone was tearing pages out of a history book, trying to erase her presence altogether. To the younger staff, it was confusing. A blouse, a ribbon, a fire. But the older ones knew better. They remembered her warmth, the way she humanized the monarchy. To them, each object held weight: handwritten notes, worn slippers, the ribbon around a wilted bouquet, all fragments of a life that had touched millions. Questions lingered in hushed tones. Was Camilla given permission? Could this have been grief disguised as destruction or something colder? No one had answers, only suspicions. The secrecy of the locked door, the chosen items, the flames. It all carried a meaning too dark to name. Later, the house steward gathered the staff, reminding them of their lifelong duty to silence. His words were steady, but his face betrayed the same unease that haunted them all. We saw too much tonight. Say nothing beyond these walls. Elizabeth, her voice faint yet firm, broke the silence. We guarded her in life, and we will guard her in death. No one dared to disagree. That night, Clarence House did not sleep. Within its walls, the staff knew they had become silent witnesses to a deeper conflict, not about titles, but about memory and the legacy of the woman the world still mourned. But what really happened behind palace walls with William, Charles, and the fire that wouldn't die? Keep watching. William, Charles, and the fire that wouldn't die. But the biggest question remained unanswered. Where was Charles when the flames of tension began to spread? Those close to the palace claim he chose silence, retreating behind that familiar wall of diplomacy he has worn like armor for decades. Silence, however, can be louder than words. And for William, it cut deeper than the smoke rising from his mother's lost possessions. Witnesses say William's voice, usually calm and measured, shook with something far more powerful than anger. It trembled with disbelief. To him, this was not about discarded trinkets, but about memories deliberately chosen and destroyed. Ballet slippers, handwritten letters, cherished photographs, each piece held the weight of Diana's presence, a presence that could never be replaced. Yet when William confronted his father, he heard not comfort, not outrage, but a quiet plea for understanding. Charles allegedly sighed and spoke softly, suggesting Camilla's actions were not meant to wound but were born of her own burdens. Imagine hearing that from your father. William did not. His shock was instant, his reply sharp. How could anyone excuse the erasure of history, especially when it was tied to his mother's legacy? Rumors swirl that Charles, visibly torn, refused to fuel a public battle. His words, they say, leaned toward caution. Mistakes must remain private. Family disputes should never spill into the press. But that very caution, that cold shield of diplomacy, is what left William feeling more abandoned than ever. For palace staff listening from the shadows, the moment was unforgettable. William's fists clenched as he muttered words only a son who had seen too much could say. "I won't let this happen again, Father. Not like this." Charles, meanwhile, turned toward the window, gazing not at his son, but at his own reflection, as if searching for the king he was expected to be yet reluctant to become. Outside, the gates of the palace remained firmly shut, but inside, the atmosphere was smoldering, not with visible fire, but with betrayal, silence, and unspoken pain. Perhaps that is the true tragedy. Royal crowns may shine under ceremony, but behind closed doors, the people wearing them are marked by wounds time cannot heal. But what secret acts of loyalty to Princess Diana are still unfolding today? Stay tuned to find out. The silent loyalty to Princess Diana that refuses to fade. Long before the flames and the whispers that followed, Diana's presence in the palace was more than royal duty. It was personal. To the staff, she wasn't just the Princess of Wales. She was warm in corridors that often felt cold. She remembered names, asked after families, and once even helped a porter carry dishes when his hand was bandaged. These gestures may have seemed small, but to those who served her, they became unforgettable treasures, memories as real as the gowns she wore or the letters she left behind. So when news broke in recent years that some of her belongings had been damaged, burned even, the pain among former staff ran deeper than protocol. To them, these weren't just royal items. They were pieces of laughter, fragments of kindness, reminders of someone who had once softened their working days. Margaret, a retired housemaid, recalled the morning she heard the rumors. She telephoned the palace in disbelief, asking only one thing. Were Diana's letters really gone? The silence she received in response told her everything. She hung up and sat by her window, remembering the day Diana brought her tea after her husband's funeral, followed later by a card with a tiny pressed "Forget-me-not." Inside Clarence's house, the atmosphere shifted in subtle but unmistakable ways. Elizabeth, one of the dressers who had seen the fire with her own eyes, quietly asked for reassignment. In the laundry, Agnes pressed a signed blouse of Diana's as though she could restore not only the fabric but the memory it carried. Some staff grew distant in their duties, hesitations in opening doors, pauses in taking coats, gestures of quiet defiance that spoke louder than words. And then there was the portrait. Hung in a hallway outside the Queen's gallery, it seemed to draw more visitors than ever. Staff would stop before it, some whispering prayers, others brushing a finger against the frame. No one spoke openly, but it became an unspoken ritual, a way of declaring that Diana had not been erased. Because for them, Diana was never just a royal chapter. She was a living memory, a light they had carried, and even now, they refused to let that light go dim. But what secrets did the silent fire hiding in the palace reveal? Here's why you need to see this. The silent fire that haunted the palace. In the laundry room, where silence often carried more weight than words, an old gown once worn by Diana lay scorched. The collar was singed, the embroidery forever ruined, yet Agnes, the loyal hand who had pressed it decades ago, still ran her iron across it as if smoothing out not fabric, but memory itself. That small act was not just about cloth. It was a reminder that the past refused to be erased. The palace, however, had changed. The sound of laughter once spilling from the kitchens faded into uneasy quiet. Servants who once moved briskly slowed their steps. Some refused to touch Camilla's coat. Others deliberately opened doors a second later than expected. None dared speak openly, but their gestures were sharp enough to cut. Along the gallery, staff and visitors alike paused longer at Diana's portrait, fingertips brushing the frame in silent reverence. These weren't mere rituals. They were vows of loyalty to a legacy that outlived the woman herself. And then the whispers began. The fire that consumed personal letters, keepsakes, and irreplaceable mementos. Was it truly an accident, or a calculated move to strip Diana's memory of its tangible power? After all, history in royal circles is preserved not just through words, but through objects. A shoe, a handwritten note, a gown. All of them become evidence of love, influence, and permanence. To erase them is to weaken their owner's hold on the collective heart. By the time Camilla settled onto the Queen's throne, she had already achieved what many thought impossible, shifting from public opposition to royal acceptance. Yet Diana's presence lingered stubbornly, not only in the eyes of William and Harry, but in every story of compassion, kindness, and grace that seemed to echo her spirit. For Camilla, acceptance may never have been enough. Perhaps what she longed for was authority without shadow, an uncontested space where Diana's memory no longer threatened her image. But this is where speculation grows. Could that blaze have been more than flames in a hearth? Was it instead an attempt to reshape history itself? If so, the plan backfired, because Diana's memory proved indestructible. Ashes may silence paper and scorch silk, but love, especially the love Diana inspired, cannot be burned away. But what secret was Prince William hiding when he quietly sealed Diana's room forever? Don't scroll away. Prince William quietly sealed Diana's room forever. After Diana's tragic passing in 1997, Kensington Palace became more than just a royal residence. It was a place heavy with memory, whispers, and unspoken rules. Her private room, carefully preserved but never displayed, stood as one of the palace's quietest secrets. For years, staff dusted shelves, adjusted curtains, and checked temperatures, but they never moved the things she left behind. The perfume bottles, the charity notes scattered on her desk, the photographs of her boys. It was as though the air itself still carried her presence. Yet, something shifted 2 days after a small fire broke out at the palace. At dawn, before tourists could crowd the gates, Prince William appeared without notice. No entourage, no ceremony, just a single key in his hand and a look of resolve. Guards stepped aside as he walked to the one place few dared to enter, his mother's room. Witnesses say he lingered at the door before finally unlocking it, the metallic sound echoing down the corridor. Inside, time felt frozen. The soft scent of lavender lingered. Sunlight fell across the desk where Diana once wrote letters, and on the bed rested a cushion she had cherished in her loneliest hours. For a while, William simply stood in silence, as if breathing in the comfort and sorrow bound to those four walls. But this visit wasn't about nostalgia. It was about protection. He opened drawers filled with carefully stored keepsakes, letters, cassettes, a bracelet engraved with his name, and quietly gathered them into a locked container. These were not souvenirs for public eyes, but fragments of a life he vowed to shield. Handing the sealed box to a trusted aide, William gave a rare command. These items would rest in the royal vault under his authority, not under Diana's. That very day, a discreet memo spread through palace staff. Access revoked, security tightened, questions deflected. Diana's room was no longer a relic for others to peer into. It had become sacred ground. Some whispered relief, others quiet respect, but one truth stood out. Prince William had drawn a line, not just for the palace, but for his mother's legacy. Behind that locked door, memory was no longer vulnerable. It was safe. But what secret vow did William make to honor Diana's legacy? Stay glued to uncover the full story behind his promise. William's silent promise to Diana. In the quiet halls of the palace, After the fire that threatened to erase pieces of Diana's memory, a different fire began to burn in William. Outwardly, he carried on with royal duties, his expression steady, his manner polite. Yet those who worked close to him noticed the change. His voice had grown more deliberate, his pace slower but filled with purpose, as though every step carried the weight of an unspoken vow. It wasn't grief in the dramatic sense the world had seen after Diana died in 1997. This time it was quieter, personal, intentional, and far more guarded. Alone at night in his study, while the children slept and the palace dimmed, William often sat before the faint glow of a fire. On his desk were private photographs, snapshots of Diana smiling, laughing, holding baby George in a moment never shared with the press. He would hold them for long minutes, not in anger anymore, but with resolve. On one such evening, he opened a leather notebook and wrote words he could never say aloud. A letter that promised Diana her grandchildren would not only know her stories, but live her values, that her love, her defiance, and her compassion would remain in the monarchy's future, even if others tried to rewrite it. He sealed the note in a silver box, hidden beneath a key he kept close to his chest. But his tribute was not limited to paper. Quietly, away from the spotlight, he began sketching plans for initiatives in her name, causes of mental health and child advocacy she had championed. No grand announcements yet, just careful steps. And as dawn stretched pink across London, one truth lingered. Diana's presence was not lost. William had turned her memory into a living promise, unyielding, unburnable, and eternal. So, what do you think really happened when Prince William caught Camilla burning Diana's belongings? Was it shock or scandal? We'd like to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.